You ever wake up to the smell of hot asphalt and realize somebody stole your property without moving an inch of it? That's how my Tuesday started. The smell hit me before my feet touched the floor, thick and bitter, like burned rubber and diesel fumes bleeding through my bedroom window. At first, I thought the county was doing roadwork nearby. Maybe patching the subdivision entrance. But then I heard it, the low metallic hum of a steamroller, the sharp beeping of heavy equipment backing up, and the deep rumble of dump trucks shifting weight like thunder rolling across dry ground. I pulled on my jeans and stepped onto the porch, coffee still warm in my hand, and the mug slipped right through my fingers when I saw it. My road was gone. Not damaged. Gone. Covered in 6 inches of fresh black asphalt, still steaming in the cold Texas morning air. The gravel crunch I'd paid $80,000 for, the private road I bought separately from the house, specifically to stay outside HOA control, had been buried overnight like it never existed. The heat rising off that pavement bent the morning light, made everything shimmer. And then I saw the stone pillars. 2 giant limestone monuments planted at the front entrance of my property like tombstones. Brass letters bolted across the front, Willowbrook Commons East entrance. My property. My road. Their name. My jaw locked so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Pieces of my fence were stacked off to the side like firewood. Survey stakes snapped in half. The orange property markers my surveyor had pounded in last spring were crushed flat into the dirt. Somebody hadn't just crossed a line. They paved over it. Then I spotted the letter. Folded neatly under a decorative rock at the edge of the new asphalt, like that made it polite. HOA Community Improvement Notice. The paper still smelled like fresh toner. According to the letter, the Homeowners Association had approved an emergency access expansion for community safety and property value enhancement. They even billed me $3,200 for the upgrade. Upgrade. I stood there staring at that word while sweat prickled under my shirt despite the cool morning air. Then the sound hit me. Car doors slamming. Laughter. Engines idling. I looked up the road, and my stomach dropped. 58 cars. 58 damn cars parked bumper to bumper on my private road like it was a Walmart parking lot. SUVs, pickup trucks, Teslas, luxury sedans. Homeowners using my land like it belonged to them. Kids unloading coolers. Someone setting up folding chairs. Like this was normal. Like they'd won. And standing right in the middle of it, holding a clipboard like she was inspecting conquered territory, was Vivian Ashcroft. White blouse. Designer sunglasses. Perfect blonde hair untouched by the humidity. HOA president. Real estate shark. Suburban dictator in heels. She smiled when she saw me, like she was expecting gratitude. "Good morning, Garrett," she called. "Doesn't it look so much better?" That's the thing about people like Vivian. They mistake silence for surrender. What she didn't know was this road wasn't just private property. It was the one thing in this county I controlled down to the inch. And every one of those 58 cars sitting on it? By sunrise tomorrow, they'd all be gone. That road was the reason I bought the property in the first place. Not the house. Not the land. The road. Funny how people hear that and think it makes no sense until they understand what private access really means in Texas. Control the road, you control who comes in, who goes out, and who gets to pretend your land belongs to them. 3 years earlier, I had just sold my commercial development company in Dallas. 22 years of concrete, zoning fights, drainage permits, and county hearings. I'd built shopping centers, apartment complexes, and industrial parks all over the state. Long days, long contracts, and longer lawsuits. By 46, I had enough money to stop waking up to conference calls and lawyers billing me by the hour. So I went looking for quiet. Found it on the edge of Willowbrook Commons. 3 acres of hill country land, oak trees bending in the wind, a modest stone house sitting 400 yards off the main highway. Quiet enough you could hear crickets at night, and the distant hum of cattle on neighboring ranches. But the house was not the selling point. The road was. A winding gravel access road, 18 feet wide and almost a quarter-mile long, cutting through the edge of the subdivision, but legally detached from it. Private deeded access. Separate parcel. Separate taxes. Separate ownership. That mattered. The previous owner, George Blackwood, was 78 when I met him. Old rancher. Sunburned skin like leather, hands rough as tree bark, boots worn smooth from decades of gravel dust. The kind of man who looked you in the eye and measured your worth in about 3 seconds. When we walked the property line, the gravel crunching under our boots, he stopped halfway down that road and tapped his cane against the ground. I still remember the sound. Sharp. Hollow. Final. He looked at me and said, "Son, the house is just walls. The land is just dirt. But the road? The road decides who owns peace." At the time, I thought it sounded dramatic. Then he explained. Back in 1987, when developers carved up the neighboring land into Willowbrook Commons, they offered him a fortune for an easement through his road. George refused. Did not want strangers cutting through his land. So they built around him instead. Left his access untouched. Protected by deed language tighter than a bank vault. I paid $80,000 extra for that road because George made one thing clear. Never trust an HOA to respect boundaries they cannot profit from. I remember sitting at the closing table, the smell of stale coffee and printer ink filling the room, reading every line of that deed myself. Parcel A, residence. Parcel B, private access road. Exclusive ownership. No community easement. No public right-of-way. Clean. Locked tight. That road was my firewall. My line in the dirt. And standing there that morning, staring at fresh asphalt covering every inch of it, hearing strangers laugh and slam car doors like they owned the place, George's voice came back so clear it felt like he was standing beside me. Own the road, control the land. And for the first time since buying that property, I realized somebody had just made the mistake of forgetting that truth. Vivian Ashcroft had the kind of smile that looked expensive and dishonest at the same time. The kind you see on billboards selling luxury homes nobody actually needs. I had known her for about 8 months, ever since I moved into the property, and in that time she had made it her mission to remind me that Willowbrook Commons ran on her rules. She was 52, a top-producing realtor in the county, drove a white BMW X5 polished so clean it reflected sunlight like a mirror, and wore those oversized designer sunglasses even when the sky was cloudy. Vivian treated the neighborhood like her private kingdom. She was not just the HOA president. She was the HOA. The board did whatever she said, mostly because half of them were her real estate clients, and the other half were too tired to argue. First month I moved in, she came by with cookies and paperwork. That should have been my first warning. The cookies smelled like vanilla and manipulation. The paperwork was an invitation to voluntarily integrate my road into the community maintenance system. Her words, not mine. I laughed and told her no. Politely. She smiled and nodded, but her jaw tightened just enough for me to notice. That was strike one. A few weeks later, she sent me a formal complaint about dust from my gravel road drifting onto the subdivision entrance. Said it was affecting curb appeal. I ignored it because legally she had no authority over my road. Then came the letters about road noise. Apparently the sound of gravel under tires was disturbing evening peace. Then she complained my delivery trucks were creating traffic flow concerns, which was funny considering I had maybe 2 deliveries a month. Every complaint sounded official. Every complaint ended with a suggestion. Sell the road easement to the HOA. Let the community maintain it. Help improve neighborhood access. It was never about dust. Never about noise. It was about control. I started asking around. Neighbors talk when they think you are listening. Turns out Vivian had been pushing for a second entrance into Willowbrook for almost 2 years. The subdivision only had one main entrance off the county road, and during school traffic it backed up almost half a mile. People complained. Emergency response times were slower than county recommendations. Property values were flattening. A second access point would solve all of it. But building one from scratch would cost the HOA almost $300,000. My road? It was already there. Already connected. Already graded. All they had to do was take it. And Vivian had decided that was easier than asking. Standing there that morning, watching her clipboard in hand while residents unloaded coolers and folding chairs onto my land, I understood the full picture. This was not random. This was planned. The paving crew. The stone pillars. The signs. The fake improvement notice. The community event. She had timed everything perfectly, turning my road into public space before I could react, counting on pressure and momentum to make it permanent. That is how people like Vivian operate. They create reality first, then force the paperwork later. A tactic I knew well from 20 years in development. But Vivian made one mistake. She thought because I retired, I forgot how the game was played. And judging by the smug tilt of her head that morning, she had no idea she had just stepped onto the most expensive trap of her life. I should have turned around right then, marched back inside, and called my attorney. That would have been the normal move. The safe move. But standing there on my porch, smelling hot tar baking under the Texas sun and hearing strangers laugh on my land, I wanted to see how far Vivian was willing to take it. So I grabbed my truck keys and headed down the road. My road. Or what used to be mine before it got dressed up like community property overnight. The asphalt was still soft enough that my boots stuck slightly with every step, making that tacky pull sound, like tape peeling off cardboard. Fresh work. Less than 6 hours old. I could see tire marks from the paving trucks still pressed into the surface. Sloppy edges. No county inspection marks. No permit tags. That detail mattered. By the time I reached the entrance, the place looked like a neighborhood festival. Folding tables. Kids with soccer balls. SUVs lined up both sides of the road like they were tailgating at a football game. Vivian had turned my property into a celebration of theft. And then it got worse. A security cart rolled up beside me, electric motor whining sharp in the morning quiet. A guy in a cheap uniform, maybe 25, sunglasses too big for his face, holding a clipboard like it meant something. He stepped in front of me and cleared his throat. "Sir, residents only through this entrance today. I need to see your community pass." For a second, I honestly thought I heard him wrong. The heat off the asphalt made the air ripple between us. "Community pass?" I asked. He pointed toward the stone pillars with the HOA name carved in brass like that settled it. "Private event for Willowbrook Commons residents." I stared at him, then looked past him at my mailbox. My actual mailbox. 20 yards behind him. Still standing on my property line. The absurdity hit me so hard I almost laughed. "That house at the end of this road," I said, keeping my voice level, "is mine." He shifted awkwardly and checked his clipboard. "I do not have you on the resident list for today, sir." That was when Vivian appeared, heels clicking on fresh pavement like she owned the ground itself. Her perfume hit before her words did, expensive floral trying to overpower the smell of asphalt and gasoline. "Garrett," she said, smiling for the crowd now gathering to watch, "you really should have checked your notices." Notices. Like this was some zoning update, and not a land grab. I felt every eye on me. Neighbors holding drinks. Watching. Waiting. That was the point. Public pressure. Public embarrassment. Make me look difficult. Make resistance feel unreasonable. Classic HOA politics. "You paved private property," I said. Vivian tilted her head like I was the unreasonable one. "We improved underutilized access for community benefit. Honestly, you should be thanking us." Then she handed me another paper. A bill. $3,200 for paving, landscaping, and entrance enhancements. Plus $85 a month in road maintenance fees. I could feel the paper crackle in my hand, fresh and warm from the printer. That was the moment it became clear. This was not just trespassing anymore. This was occupation. And the worst part was not the asphalt. Not the fake signs. Not even the security guard blocking me from my own house. It was Vivian smiling like she thought she had already won. I did not argue. That was the part Vivian did not expect. No yelling. No threats. No scene. I just folded the bill, slid it into my back pocket, turned around, and walked back to my house while 58 homeowners watched like they had front row seats to my surrender. I could feel their eyes on my back, hear the low murmurs, the clink of ice and plastic cups, kids laughing like this was just another Saturday neighborhood party. Vivian wanted a public defeat. Instead, I gave her silence. And silence makes people careless. The moment I got inside, I locked the front door and went straight to my office. Same oak desk I had used for 15 years negotiating land deals and fighting zoning boards. The room smelled like old paper, coffee grounds, and leather bindings. Familiar. Grounding. I pulled the original deed from the fireproof cabinet, spread it across the desk, and ran my fingers over the survey lines. Parcel B. Private access road. Exclusive deeded ownership. No easements. No community rights. Clean as a whistle. Then I pulled the county plat maps. Same result. The road was mine, down to the exact inch. But ownership was only step one. I needed to know how deep Vivian had gone. I logged into the county permit portal and searched the property address. Nothing. No paving permit. No construction permit. No roadway modification approval. Nothing filed in the last 12 months. My stomach tightened. That was big. In Texas, you cannot pave or alter roadway drainage without county review. Especially not where runoff impacts adjacent lots. I printed everything. Then I called my surveyor, Dale Whitaker. 61 years old, chain smoker, knows land boundaries better than most people know their own birthdays. By noon he was out there with his measuring wheel and GPS rig, the metallic click of the wheel tapping against fresh asphalt, while residents pretended not to notice. Dale looked at the stone pillars, spit into the grass, and shook his head. "Garrett," he said, "they built 14 feet inside your property line. 14 feet. Not inches. Feet. The pillars, landscaping, and widened entrance all sat squarely on my land. That was trespassing, unlawful construction, and property alteration. But then Dale found something worse. My original steel survey pins were gone. Dug up. Removed completely." My pulse slowed when he said it, because slow anger is the dangerous kind. In Texas, tampering with official survey markers carries serious penalties. Vivian had not just crossed legal lines. She erased them. I drove straight to the county records office after that. The air conditioning hit like ice after the 90-degree heat outside. Paper, dust, and printer toner filled the room. I requested every HOA board filing from the last 6 months. Buried in meeting minutes, I found it. A vote authorizing emergency road integration. My road. Except there was one problem. The attached map listed the parcel as community-owned. It was false. Not a mistake. False. Somebody changed the ownership designation. And at the bottom of the document was Vivian's signature. Clean. Confident. Official. That was when it clicked. This was bigger than a land grab. She had built a paper trail to justify theft after the fact. Fraud dressed up as paperwork. And people like Vivian trusted paperwork because most people never checked it. But I did. By sunset, my kitchen table was covered in maps, permits, photographs, and county records. Every piece fitting together like steel gears. Outside, I could hear music drifting from the road. Their party was still going. Their cars still lined up on my land. And for the first time all day, I smiled. Because now I knew exactly how to make every one of them regret parking there. By 6 o'clock that evening, the heat from the new asphalt was still rising off the road like breath off a stove. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee gone cold in my hand, watching HOA residents move in and out like they had been using that entrance for years. Coolers. Lawn chairs. Kids on scooters. Tires rolling over land they had no legal right to touch. The sound of gravel was gone now, replaced by rubber humming against blacktop. That bothered me more than I expected. Gravel had a sound. A warning. You heard someone coming. Asphalt was silent. Sneaky. Like the people who laid it. I spread every document across the kitchen table again. Survey maps. County filings. Permit records. Dale's measurements. The fake HOA vote. Vivian's signature. Every piece confirmed the same thing. They had built their entire little expansion on theft and paperwork they hoped nobody would challenge. The normal move would have been court. File an injunction Monday morning. Spend 6 months in hearings while they kept using my road. That is how most people fight. Slow. Expensive. Predictable. But I spent 22 years in commercial development. I knew something most homeowners never learn. Property law moves slow. Towing law moves fast. That thought hit me like a switch flipping on in my head. I walked into my office and pulled an old black binder off the shelf. Dust rose into the air when I dropped it on the desk. Towing agreements. Back when I owned shopping centers, I kept contracts with half the licensed impound operators in the county. Illegal parking, abandoned vehicles, unauthorized access. We handled it all. Most of those guys still knew me. I picked up the phone and called the first number. Hank Mercer. Mercer Recovery Services. 30 years in towing. Gruff voice like gravel in a blender. Garrett Holloway, he said when he answered. Been a while. I explained the situation. Private property. No easement. Unauthorized vehicles. He was quiet for about 3 seconds. Then he laughed. You still got clean title? Cleaner than church shoes. Then I can move every tire sitting on it. That was all I needed. By 7:30, I had called 4 more operators. 8 tow trucks total, all on standby. Quiet, professional, legal. Every one of them understood documentation mattered. So I printed copies of the deed, survey maps, and county property records for each driver. No mistakes. No confusion. Then came the warning signs. I drove to the hardware store 10 miles out and bought 6 reflective private property. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed signs. Metal stakes. Heavy gauge steel. Installed every one myself at the road entrance, the metal hammer ringing through the evening air while neighbors watched from their porches pretending not to stare. Vivian rolled up in her BMW while I was driving in the last sign. Her heels clicked against the fresh pavement, sharp and irritated. What exactly do you think you are doing? She asked, arms folded tight. I wiped sweat off my neck and looked at her. Giving notice. She laughed. Actually laughed. Garrett, this is community property now. You cannot just make up rules. That line almost made me smile. Make up rules. Coming from the woman who built stone monuments on stolen land. I tapped the sign with my knuckles. Steel against steel. Clean sound. These rules are older than your HOA. Her smile froze. For the first time all day I saw it. Doubt. Small, but there. She turned and walked back to her car, muttering something about lawyers and board authority. But it did not matter. The trap was already set. And all I needed now was for them to ignore the warning. People like Vivian always make the same mistake. They think a warning is weakness. By 9 that night, the neighborhood party was still going. Music floated through the oak trees, muffled bass vibrating through the humid air, laughter spilling out onto my land like they had rented the place for the weekend. My 6 tow-away signs stood there in plain sight, reflective under the porch lights, impossible to miss. Private property. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. Clear. Legal. Direct. And they ignored every single one. That was the beauty of entitlement. It blinds people. Around 10:30, I watched from my porch as Vivian walked the line of parked cars, drink in hand, smiling and talking to residents like a queen at her own coronation. She saw the signs. I know she did. She even stopped at one, stared at it, and laughed with 2 board members standing beside her. One of them pointed toward my house. They all looked over. Vivian lifted her glass in a little mock toast. That told me everything. She was not worried. She thought the signs were bluff. Thought I was bluff. By midnight, the road was packed tighter than I had ever seen it. Cars angled onto the grass, tires over the shoulder, bumper to bumper from the stone pillars all the way to the bend near my mailbox. 58 vehicles by my count. Maximum density. Exactly what I wanted. The air smelled like charcoal smoke, spilled beer, and fresh-cut grass. Generators hummed from the HOA clubhouse down the hill. Porch lights flickered through the trees like little islands. I sat at my kitchen table with the deed, survey, and county records stacked beside me, legal copies clipped and ready. At 12:15, Hank texted. All trucks ready? I looked out the window one more time. Vivian's BMW sat front and center under the new stone entrance like a crown jewel. That almost felt poetic. 1 o'clock came. Then 2. The party burned itself out. Lights went dark one house at a time. Engines cooled. Doors shut. Silence slowly took the neighborhood back. By 2:45, the only sound left was cicadas buzzing in the trees and the low hum of a street lamp near the subdivision gate. At exactly 3 o'clock I heard it. Diesel engines. Low and steady. 8 tow trucks rolling down the county road like a convoy. Amber lights flashing across the dark like warning beacons. Hank led the line, window down, paperwork on the dash. The smell of diesel mixed with the night air as they pulled in and lined up beside the entrance. Quiet. Efficient. Professional. No shouting. No drama. Just business. I handed each driver the same packet. Property deed. Survey map. Vehicle authorization notice. Hank looked over the line of cars and let out a slow whistle. That is a lot of expensive bad decisions, he said. Then the hooks dropped. Metal clanged against steel. Chains rattled. Hydraulic lifts hissed. One by one, 58 cars started leaving my property. Tires lifted off asphalt. Engines silent. Headlights dark. It was almost peaceful, like watching a tide pull back. By 3:30, porch lights started flicking on. Curtains moved. Front doors opened. Sleepy faces stepped outside in slippers and robes, staring at empty spaces where their vehicles used to be. Confusion first. Then panic. Then, right on schedule, Vivian's front door flew open. She stormed down her driveway in a silk robe, hair wild from sleep, stopping dead when she saw the line of tow trucks carrying away her neighborhood. And when she saw her BMW being loaded last, her face changed in a way I will never forget. Not anger. Realization. She had ignored the warning. And now the road was taking everything back. The sound that woke the neighborhood was not shouting. It was paperwork becoming real. Tow winches whining. Hydraulic lifts hissing. Steel chains tightening under weight. By 4 in the morning, the entire entrance looked like a dealership evacuation. Empty pavement where 58 cars had been sitting just hours earlier. The fresh asphalt looked naked without them, black and shiny under the amber tow lights, like the road itself was finally breathing again. Vivian came storming toward me across the pavement, slippers slapping against the ground, silk robe tied crooked, phone clutched in one hand like it was a weapon. Her perfume still cut through the diesel in the air, sharp and expensive, but now there was panic underneath it. You cannot do this, she snapped, voice cracking from sleep and anger. I held up the deed. Same document she should have checked before stealing from me. Private property, I said. Calm. Simple. Posted notice. Unauthorized vehicles. She looked at Hank like she expected him to stop. Hank just shrugged and tapped the paperwork clipped to his board. Everything checks out, ma'am. That was when the residents started flooding in. Front doors opening. Barefoot husbands in sweatpants. Women in robes. Teenagers with bed hair and confused faces. Everyone asking the same question. Where is my car? The answers came fast. Impound lot. Owner release. Storage fees. Towing fees. Documentation required. The temperature of the whole neighborhood changed in minutes. Confusion turned into anger, and anger turned into blame. Not at me. At Vivian. Because once people heard private property, once they saw the signs, once Hank showed the timestamps proving the warnings had been posted hours before midnight, the reality hit them. Vivian had told everyone the road belonged to the HOA. She lied. By sunrise, the first county inspector showed up. Dale had filed the complaint the night before using the missing survey markers as grounds for immediate review. That brought code enforcement fast. 2 county trucks rolled in just after 7, white doors with black lettering, clipboards in hand. The inspectors walked the road, boots sticking slightly to the still-curing asphalt, taking photos of the pillars, the grading, the drainage edges. One of them looked at me and asked the question I had been waiting for. Who authorized this construction? I pointed straight at Vivian. Her face strained of color. By 9 o'clock, they'd posted a stop-use order on the stone entrance. Bright orange paper stapled right over the brass HOA sign. Illegal construction. Subject to county review. That paper flapped in the wind like a flag of surrender. Then came the financial damage. The paving company showed up demanding payment because Vivian had signed personally on the contract pending HOA reimbursement. $38,000. The towing fees stacked up fast too. Average release fee was $450 per vehicle, plus storage after 24 hours. Homeowners started doing the math. That is when the board turned. Right there in the parking lot near the clubhouse, I watched 3 board members corner Vivian, voices low but sharp, papers waving in their hands. Their faces had that tight look people get when they realize they trusted the wrong person. And standing there with coffee in my hand, smelling diesel, hot asphalt, and fresh panic in the morning air, I realized something important. Taking the cars was never the real punishment. The real punishment was making the truth impossible to ignore. By the end of that week, Willowbrook Commons looked different. Not physically at first. The houses were the same. The trimmed lawns. The matching mailboxes. The little flags by the porches. But the air felt heavier, like a place waking up from a long lie. People stopped waving at Vivian. Board members stopped taking her calls. Her white BMW sat in the impound lot for 3 days because ownership release required proof of authorization, and the towing company was not in the mood for shortcuts. Every resident had to pay their own fees to recover their cars, and every one of them got the same receipt stamped with the same phrase, removed from private property. That phrase spread through the neighborhood faster than gossip ever could. The county hearing happened 4 days later. Small courtroom. Cold air conditioning. Smell of paper and old carpet. I sat at the front table with my deed, survey maps, permit records, and photos of the destroyed survey markers. Vivian sat across from me, shoulders stiff, attorney beside her flipping through files like there was still a way out. There was not. The county ruled fast. Unauthorized construction. Property line violation. Survey marker tampering. Unpermitted paving. The HOA was ordered to remove the stone entrance, restore the land, and cover all costs. $38,000 for the paving contract. $12,000 in county fines. Restoration costs estimated at another $22,000. And because Vivian had signed the paving contract under false authority, the HOA board voted that same afternoon to hold her personally liable for a large portion of it. That was the sound of power collapsing. Quiet. Paperwork. Signatures. Not shouting. Just consequences. 2 weeks later, demolition crews came back. Same smell of diesel. Same heavy machinery. But this time, they were tearing out what they built. The stone pillars cracked apart under hydraulic pressure, the brass HOA letters tossed into the back of a dump truck like scrap metal. The asphalt got peeled up in long black strips, exposing the earth underneath. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, boots planted in dirt that finally felt like mine again. Dale came back out to reset the survey markers, driving fresh steel pins into the ground with that same sharp metallic ring George Blackwood used to make with his cane. Full circle. I had fresh gravel delivered the next morning. 40 tons of crushed limestone spread clean across the road, the sound of it pouring out of the truck like rain hitting a tin roof. When my tires rolled over it for the first time again, that crunch came back. Loud. Honest. Familiar. I installed a steel gate at the entrance after that. Black iron. Heavy hinges. Keypad access. Private. Permanent. Right beside it, I mounted a new sign. Clean white letters on black steel. Private road. No HOA access. Sometimes simple words hit the hardest. As for Vivian, she resigned from the board before the month ended. Lost 2 major real estate listings after word got around. Reputation matters in small counties. Last I heard, she was trying to sell her house and move to another subdivision 20 miles east. Funny thing is, to get there from Willowbrook now, residents have to use the original county entrance. Add 7 miles to the morning school run. Traffic backs up every weekday like it used to. Exactly the problem Vivian tried to solve by stealing my road. George was right all those years ago. The house is just walls. The land is just dirt. But the road decides who owns peace. And in the end, peace sounds a lot like gravel under your tires and a locked gate behind you.